Hey guys, welcome to the second half of the Rumblecast. I'm here with Big Math over on my channel this time round. And by the way, we got a new logo. I hope you guys have a look at it. It's awesome. It looks very cool, and we're very happy with it. So we're going to be running with that. Yeah, I'm going to make sure I'm pointing the wrong way. Uh, yeah, we're going to be jumping into some other topics. We had kind of showed on the Big Math version. Obviously, we were jumping into the second half here, and I kind of want to jump straight into it because you talked about Rumble being in trouble and about what the community can do to support. Obviously, we know we're not all doom and gloom. We do think Rumble's still in a relatively good spot, but we just wanted to get vent some frustrations, I think, with the first couple of weeks. But now I'm talking a little bit about features that Rumble's needs, and this is something that I'd love your input on. I'm going to lead with a couple of examples, and then I'd love to hear maybe what you have to say as well. We've talked about this a little bit in the past. On one of our last podcasts, we kind of touched on some features that we'd love to see, but I'm going to be more concrete about them now. I'd love to see two major things. Guild wars or something to do with guilds, because right now your guild revolves around grinding points that you do passively, and there isn't really much guild interaction. No one really says anything in the guild chat ultimately. I mean, there was a bit of social banter there, but like there's nothing to work towards as a guild other than make sure you do your arc lights, and if you do your arc lights you're going to get your points to get the guild chest. There needs to be some kind of guild versus guild interactions going on, because I just think otherwise it's a complete waste of a feature. It doesn't really, everyone mostly in my guilds do the talking on Discord, so they don't even use the guild talking function that much anyway. And the second thing is I would love some alternative PvP queues that are not tied to your honor rating, but are sort of more standalone and individual. Those of you that have played Clash Royale will know that there's something called the 21 win challenge, where you basically queue up and you get 3 losses and you have to win as many times as you can before you get 3 losses, a little bit like an arena mode per se. And that's why I mentioned Command & Conquer Rivals on the first half of this podcast, because Command & Conquer Rivals, despite being a game that died out very quickly within a week of EA launching it, it had way more features. It had replay systems. It had better guild or better clan interactions. It had these things where essentially there were like resource challenges where you queued up with a deck and you had to win as many times as you could before losing a certain number of times. And the further that you got, the better rewards that you got. And that will also help add another option for players who want to grind gold in different ways going into these challenges. And of course, there'll be pay-to-win advantages for these challenges, but good players who are really skilled can probably grind it out and get some good rewards. So I think that would give something else for players to play whilst they are stuck in PvE or bored of just the traditional PvP maps or whatever. It just needs that extra little thing to do on a daily basis, that extra thing to grind, that extra little event to run with, just to give it a little bit more interest as it stands.
Yeah, I think what you just, like the two examples you just gave, so guild and then like challenges and stuff, for me, I think so what was on my list was having 1v1. Having 1v1, and I talked about it on the last episode of the Rumblecast, but like this is the single feature. I don't understand why it's not in the game. It needs to be here. There's so many things we could do if we had a 1v1. Like, I mean, as content creators, but just like for the guild, here in my guild, it's one of my members, I think that's Quinn actually. He said, yeah, it seems tuned to a very inactive guild. He's talking about once we finish that war chest, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do. And we finished the war chest after like the second or third arc light missions. So then afterwards, the guild's dead. We just don't talk for like a few weeks until it restarts. And yeah, they need to do something. I think having 1v1s would be awesome. I love everyone in my guild and all of the other guilds, obviously we have. But yeah, having a 1v1, being able to practice decks on different maps. I want some different maps. So map selection, 1v1. I think that would be extremely huge to have, even if it's only to be played into guild. And I think that would also help with the community overall, because we could host some tournaments. I've been talking with so many content creators. You, Fat Seb, Warshak, with I haven't talked to Mr. Brute yet, but all of these guys, we could host some tournaments if we had 1v1. We could have done it day one. That would have been awesome. I'm waiting for it. I've already told everyone, the second it comes out, I am starting a tournament. You're going to be caster. We're going to have Andrew Guy as a caster as well. We're going to have, everyone's going to be insane. I just feel like it's such a mismark to just not have that feature at launch. And I think it would help so many different aspects of the game at once.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's another thing that Rivals had when it launched. It had a fully functioning custom game mode where you could set the map, you could set everything that you wanted to in terms of playing in those kind of like 1v1s. And there was a guy who I love called Blade. He's still, I think he even still streams Rivals occasionally. Like he's like one of the most committed guys to that actual to that game. He ran a series of tournaments where essentially he was running community tournaments almost every week where you were able to play in and do 1v1s. He would also cast over like guest 1v1s. You know, it'd be so great to have creators just face off against each other and have like, you know, little casting over it, and there's a little bit of beef that you can create between, you know, artificial beef, but create a bit of beef between creators. It'd be really, really cool to have those kind of features. So yeah, it just feels, I really just feel like they've launched, as with classic Blizzard, I feel like they've launched a game with half the features that it needs to be successful. They did it with Diablo 4 and they still haven't got there. They launched a game that was at its core really good, but just missing so many features that would make it a great game. I feel like they've done it again with Rumble. They've launched a great game, but it's just missing features that would make it a really good game. So yeah, I think that's just, you know, maybe they were just under pressure to release and they couldn't wait to sort of delay development anymore because they already delayed it by a year, didn't they? So like it just feels like they're still missing features that would make this a really great game.
Yeah, and like just to add like a last thing, like when I'm playing on stream, and you just talked about that, like when we're playing on stream, and like I think I matched against Machag like on stream, and it was so fun because we recognize the name, we know who it is. It's fun to 1v1, and he actually beat me the first game. Then we matched again, and I won the second game. It was so hype, but then we didn't match a third game, right? So like, there's no closure to that. Like, there's, I don't know. I just really want that feature. I can't. If Blizzard, you guys are listening, please, please, please add 1v1. I think this should be top priority. I have some other ones I could go on, but
yeah, feel free because, you know, my main ones were the events and the guild wars. So obviously there's plenty that I could talk about, but those are the two really core ones. And I agree with you, like custom game features as well. Like those are the ones that were really core to me to make this sort of a successful game in the long run.
Yeah, for me, my other one, which is much simpler, which should be easy enough to integrate, or maybe not. I don't know. But why don't we have deck slots? I mean, once again, I've talked about it last week. I hate playing PvE because if I play PvE or like the dungeons, right? So I create this perfect Dracusath list for PvP. I want to play Dracusath PvP. Oh, but I'm missing a gold border. I don't think I changed my list. I just ran my PvP list in the dungeon because I don't want to remove something and then forget to put it back, and then I want to play it and then I'm playing the wrong deck. It's an easy feature.
Even just 2 deck slots per leader. One for PvE, one for PvP. And you can change one of each of them as you go. That would be such an insanely good quality of life feature that I think Blizzard would everyone would really benefit from. Because I agree with you. I hate it. Was also because, frankly, the deck creation process is laborious. Like it's and sometimes the swap feature doesn't work and you get stuck and you can't swap a unit out and you have to like go back into the deck slots.
Restart the game sometimes.
Yeah, it would just be good to have a slot that you know you could change to PvE and not have to worry about your PvP list, PvP list getting messed up. I guess the only problem is that, you know, when you're queuing in for PvP, you'd have to go into your deck list and make sure you'd selected your PvP list. But maybe they could even code it that you had one list that goes into PvE content and one list that goes into PvP, and they even just name the deck slots PvP and PvE, and you know then that, you know, they just get automatically chosen. But yeah, I agree with you. Deck slots would be such a nice quality of life feature.
Oh yeah, for like 2 deck slots for every leader, or like let's say you could just add a slot at the end with like a plus symbol. You click on it, and then you could choose your leader and then create a second list. I don't think it would be that like outrageous to code. I don't know. I've been a game developer on some games. I've worked at Ubisoft, so I know a little bit. I don't think it would be hard to implement. And I think it would be an amazing feature. But obviously, I'm not Blizzard. But please, guys, if you guys at Blizzard are watching, make sure to add deck slots. That would be amazing. And guys, make sure to tell us down below which other features we would need to see in the game. What's your top 3? Yep.
I think, you know, good to hear from you guys as well, because I think that me and Big Math are obviously very siloed in kind of how we feel because we've been playing for a lot longer, but we obviously don't have that new player experience anymore. So some of you guys that have started in the last week, it would be great to know what your views are on like, I've been playing this game for a week and a half now. These are the things that I think it needs to be successful for a new player. That'd be great to hear from you guys as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we move on to how pay to win is Rumble. This is something that has popped up as a topic in my YouTube comments everywhere. And I want to discuss this because this is a free-to-play mobile game. And with any free-to-play game, the model has to generate revenue from somewhere. And obviously, there are a lot of people that are like, oh, I wish it was just cosmetic only. And the general, the general concept with free-to-play games is this: if you want to do cosmetic only revenue generation, you have to have an insanely big player base. You have to have a huge player base because most people are not going to spend. So you need to have a very big player base to counteract the fact that ultimately not everybody's going to want to spend. So when you are developing a game, especially as a free-to-play title, what's the bigger risk? The bigger risk is to develop a title that uses cosmetic only, because if the launch doesn't go well or you don't get a big enough player base, you're not going to recoup your costs. So most developers, when they're developing a game, because it costs money to develop a game, clearly everyone, if they're doing a free-to-play title, they will usually go down the route of having some kind of pay-to-win to encourage people to spend in the game. I think that Blizzard have put in the Arclight booster at a cost that they feel that let's say half of the people bought, if half the people that played Rumble bought the Arclight booster, that would be like the baseline costs covered for the game ultimately, because I guess it's what they see as the fair price for the mobile title. If you were going to pay for this mobile title outright, then I think they expect that $17.99 or whatever it is like the fair price for the game, which I actually wouldn't disagree with. I think that's a pretty good price for what you get from Warcraft Rumble, from the PvE content experience and also from the PvP side of things as well. Obviously, Warcraft Rumble is pay to win, but I think they are much less egregious about it compared to a lot of other titles out there. Like they do a decent job of balancing the PvP experience for most people up to $3,000. And to put it into context, $3,000 usually requires about between 60 and 90 games. And if you've got a very good win rate, you can usually hit $3,000 in about 50 games of a leader. But for most people, you're not going to have a 95% win rate on your leader. It's going to take you upwards of 90 to 100 games to get to $3,000. So for the majority of your PvP experience, you're probably going to feel pretty balanced versus most people that you're playing. And my free-to-play account has got full level 5s now. All of my free-to-play accounts has basically got full level 5s, which will get me to $3,000 on even footing. Obviously, no talents, not all talents, but it will get me to level 5 on even footing versus most of the people from my main deck. So it's not hard to get to those thresholds that they've set, but obviously beyond $3,000, it becomes a bit more of a tricky thing to deal with. I think, but that that's my initial thoughts anyway.
I think people are also like kind of impatient a little bit.
Sure.
When I started playing, I just bought the Arclight booster, like you just mentioned. I thought that was fair, and then you guys don't have to, right? But I'm just giving context. I played for like five weeks before spending anything else, and I pretty much had talents for every single minis. I had a bug in my shop where some minis didn't appear, but like for those that did, I had every single mini to green, and I had a talent for every single one of them. And like right now, so I've spent quite a bit more since then. We are now at like 250 Canadian dollars perhaps. We bought like a few bundles. So yes, we have spent some money on the game, but I'm getting extremely close to having pretty much a lot of units level 8 in PvP, right? So if I look at my lists, I have, for example, like my Drakisath list, right? You can see like my Pyromancer is 22. 22 is level 8 because it rounds up. Remember that. So my Drakisath, my Pyromancer, my Prowler, my Shaman, my Chain Lightning, they're all level 8 already. And like the game has been out for 2 weeks, or for me, I've played so like almost 3 months or 2 months and a half. Give it a year. I think most players who play consistently should be able to reach level 8 on all minis in a year, even if you don't buy the Arclight booster, I don't have the math exactly, but I think that's extremely fair to say, especially since there's so much importance to like the actual levels you get through the campaign. So I think we should all be able to be like at least level 8 in PvP, and level 8 in PvP is competitive. You can play level 8 because people are not going to have some level 10s. Level 10s are like so much more harder than going from 1 to level 8 in PvP is or like going from 9 to 10 is probably going from 1 to 9 together, right? And going from 8 to 9 is like 1 to 8 together. So it's I don't know. I think if you give it enough time, I don't think it's that outrageous. I've played Clash Royale. It's 10 times as worse. And that was before all the thing they did at the end, before they added the extra level. Yeah, like I had one deck that I could play, and all the other decks were unplayable. But here, I feel like I have so many more decks that I could play, even if your opponent has like one extra level. Kind of going on a tangent right now, but like if you give it enough time, I don't think it's that outrageous to say that we could have level 8 across the board in like a year easily.
No, I agree with you. And I think like you raised a really good point about the pay to win versus non-pay to win aspect. Most of my units in PvP are level 8 now. So I'm on a similar boat to you. Most of me, I can beat the whales who are at level 9. I would struggle with level 10s, but I run into a level 10 so infrequently. I've only seen one level 10 unit in PvP in my 2.5 months of playing it, and that was Porcenet's Dracosath. So I've never
gave
seen
you
a level
nightmare
10.
though.
Yeah, it did. It did give me a nightmare. It did just run down my entire army. But like, you know, I can beat whales, and I've only spent about the same as you. I've spent about $250 on the game, which is a lot of money, but we're content creators. That's kind of what we do. We spend money in the game to invest so we can get access to the content so that we can show it to you guys.
Yeah, and we have to upgrade every single list, right? So
yeah. So I spent because I thought that the reason I spent is, and I'm not trying to justify it because ultimately I don't give a crap about how much I spent in the game, but I spent initially because I wanted to catch up to content creators that I was a little further behind to make sure I had access to all the units and get some talents, etc. So that's essentially why I did it originally. But you know, I'm now very competitive in PvP. I could probably climb most of my decks to a very good level, and I wouldn't. A one level disadvantage in PvP is incredibly. You can overcome it. Yes, okay, there are some matchups that you lose a level disadvantage to, but they're not frequent, and it is easy to do so. And as you said, to get from 1 to level 8 requires such little investment compared to getting from level 8 to level 10. You know, I think, and this brings me on to the point that I was going to mention. Someone worked out that you would need to spend around $2,300 ish to max your account as it stands in Warcraft Rumble, right? That is, and I'm going to caveat this with a big.
That's not that bad,
a lot, right?
For
Exactly.
mobile games.
I'm going to caveat it with don't spend $2,300 unless you can afford it and it's not that much money to you. But what I'm saying is that compared to stuff like Clash Royale, where it costs tens of thousands of dollars to max your account, and things like those like ridiculous zombie games or those post-apocalyptic games where you have those little towns and Clash of Clans, those guys can absorb so much money out of a single whale. And they give those whales such massive advantages for doing so. I actually think Blizzard dropped the ball a little bit in the sense that they're actually probably not making as much money as they should be making because it is so cheap to max your account, and that could actually be something that potentially even hurts Warcraft Rumble in the long run. And I hate to say that because I don't want the game to be I think the game's actually in a really good space in terms of how much you can get for such small investment in the game. But ultimately, it may prove to be an issue for Warcraft Rumble that actually, especially when whales do fund the experience for most free-to-play players, like you guys that enjoying the game for free, you are being funded by the guys who have spent thousands of dollars getting level 10s and level 9s on their accounts, right? So I think almost Blizzard are like, oh gosh, maybe we undercooked how much you needed to get to sort of the top end of the level because the whales in most mobile games keep them afloat. So I think that's that is worth mentioning.
Yeah, there's something to be said to like we call that whale bait. I don't like that term that much, but like there's a lot of other stuff they could add to like, because there are some people who want to spend money. Okay, I'm one of them. Personally, I don't like spending for progression. I like skins more. We've talked about that a little bit earlier. But like if they're, and I think they will, because we have emotes now and we have skins for Cobalt, stuff like that. When they do release stuff like that, like perhaps an emote shop or a skin shop, this could be some way for those whales to spend more money. So yeah, but I think they need to like bring this feature sooner than later if they want to like get more money from those whales. But I do enjoy the fact that it's not so predatory even to whales. So yeah. I would like skins.
I would say that it's probably worth saying it is still a predatory money system because almost all free-to-play games are in some way predatory. I'm putting that in inverted commas because ultimately I think you're in control of what you spend. So like if you don't want to spend, you don't want to spend, you want to spend. But you know, any game that gates sort of progress or makes it, you know, blocks progress or makes it harder to progress without paying is kind of going in that predatory camp. And let's be real, you do hit walls as a free-to-play player. I've hit walls as a free-to-play player on my free-to-play account, not even buying the Arclight booster, and it will take me sometimes potentially weeks to get past them. But Warcraft Rumble, I think, is fair. Yes, well, exactly. And this is what I get frustrated with. You don't need to complete the game in the first week that it gets released. This game is not built like a single player game. You know, this game is not built like Starfield. You don't need to complete the game in the first week. This game is supposed to be, and this is what the problem with, I think this is a problem with modern gaming in general. This game wasn't supposed to be for the likes of me and you, Big Math, that spend hours on it per day. This game was supposed to be for your people who log on, they spend 20 minutes doing their quests. They maybe try and push a PvE level or two, and then they come back the next day and do the same thing. It is a lunchtime game. It is a in bed, you know, playing in bed before you go to sleep game. It is not a hardcore, we need to grind the absolute ever-living daylights out of this game and run it into its core. That's just not what this game's about. And that's what I think the people have the problem with. People want to complete this game as quickly as possible, but it's just not designed to do that. It's designed for you to take it slow, come on and play a few rounds, play some PvP, get a bit of honor here and there, and progress the PvE when you can. That's the issue that I think a lot of free-to-play players have. They want to complete it in the first week.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree completely. Personally, when I did, like I mentioned, I bought the Arclight booster. That's it. And I finished the campaign with just having that booster and not spending another single dime. And I never felt like the game was too hard, forcing me to spend money. I've actually never really changed my deck for a certain level at that point, which is kind of nuts, right? Normally it's supposed to be a puzzle, a challenge. So I know people have been saying they've reached walls. I know there are some, but like it's part of the fun is to figure out the issue, find some ways, theorize. It's a puzzle. I see like a puzzle. Yeah, people are a little bit, how can I say that? Impatient, I guess, to finish the campaign, finish everything. It's like, it's been 2 weeks or 2 weeks, right? It's been 2 weeks. So I don't know, give it time, upgrade your units, play PvP. I feel, you're saying there's not much content, or you're saying there's missing features. I think that's a better way of saying it. But like, play some dungeons. You're supposed to upgrade your armies, then you can play those armies in the campaign. You have your PvP. I guess some people don't enjoy PvP at all, which is fine. But we have quests, other stuff. I don't know. I'm not trying to like attack anyone. I'm not at all. I just want to like make you guys think a little bit about like the whole game. Once you finish the campaign, actually the game is not as fun because you're doing the same levels over again. Just take your time, enjoy it, man. It's super fun.
Literally what I was about to say. You put the words out of my mouth. I 100% agree with you. I bought the Arclight booster. I completed the entire campaign with Earth Elemental plus Harpies in whatever deck that I was playing.
Oh, yeah.
And on my free-to-play account, I actually had to think on Devilsaur Queen. I spent an entire hour trying to figure out what deck would work, and I played a Meat Wagon deck, which I'd never played before in my life on my main account. And I did the Devilsaur Queen with a Meat Wagon deck. And I was so happy when I beat it 2 levels down on some of my units. I was 2 levels down on Devilsaur Queen on some of my units. I was so happy when I beat it because it just felt like I'd unlocked a puzzle. And so like I think like I agree with you because I bought the Arclight booster. I kind of rushed through the campaign, and I actually regret doing it now. Not
Same.
In the sense that I don't regret doing it in the sense that it was good for my content, but I regret doing it because I feel like I missed out on enjoyment from the game. I've had so much more fun on my free-to-play account because I've had to like figure things out. Like the dungeons feel fun because I'm trying to figure out how to beat them. The amount of tech that has gone into the Dead Mines dungeon for me this week on Blackrock. Well, I've been trying to figure out how I can push the levels as much as I can just by teching in random cards. It's made me just enjoy the game that much more because it feels like the puzzle that it should be. It's frustrating, it's hard, but when you get the win, it's that much more satisfying. And that's actually really, really key for me. And the other thing is, I agree with you. Now I am so far behind on, and I noticed on your account you're the same. We have been so lazy on heroics because they are, and this is maybe a design flaw. They're fucking boring. Like it's like it's doing the same levels over and over again with every single leader is a boring way. I get why they're there, and they are rewarding for your progress, but they are boring to do. So like rushing to heroics is not fun. You shouldn't do it. You should not rush to heroics. You should take it, at the game at its pace, enjoy it while you can, do heroics when you can, and enjoy it at a good pace.
Yep. No, I agree. I don't think they're boring. I think I
find them boring, but yeah.
I love the challenge in the heroics. Some levels are gonna have a challenge. You're gonna have to change your deck, do stuff differently. I don't know. I think it can be fun. Yeah, I just think obviously it's a better experience, the campaign, the first time you go through it. But one thing I know I'll do is when Moonglade actually comes out, I'm going to take my time with those level, enjoy them. Like for me, like every time I do a level, I'm like, wow, I didn't notice all the details on the side of the map, all those different, I don't know, buildings on the side of the map, how it's all designed, it looks great. Doing my hero campaign, now that I'm actually spending some time into some levels, I'm actually okay, I'm in Lordaeron now. I'm going online, look at a little bit of lore, that I'm understanding what it's about, that I can see the level. Okay, it's undead theme because there's undeads living there. I don't know, I just get more invested when take more of my time with the campaign instead of just rushing it like I did in the first time with the
I want to rephrase my boring comment. It's boring because I progressed my levels so quickly that doing a level, I did Lordaeron recently. I'm now doing Lordaeron as my main heroic area, but my decks are still 3 levels above them. So the strategy that's supposed to be there for heroics just doesn't exist at the moment because I'm winning with Poison Harpies and Earth Elemental on every single level. So I think for me, I think my biggest piece of advice is when you get the chance to do heroics at a relatively reasonable level, just do them because you'll enjoy them that much more. I think I'm finding them a chore because I ignored them. So I ignored my heroics for so long, and then my deck leveled up so high that now I've got to go back and do heroics where I'm 3 levels below, where the interesting mechanics that are in that level are no longer interesting because I'm just kind of face rolling them, and it's just about the case of queuing my deck up and trying to beat it and then getting the sigil. Once I get to the heroics that are my level, and I think my levels are the Devil Saw Queen heroic level, I think I'll probably find them much more enjoyable again because it'll become that puzzle, it'll become that kind of way of figuring it out. So yeah, I know
they add something, right? Every time you do a heroic level, it's not the same. There's a little twist or something new, which is interesting to me.
100%. But yeah, I mean that. I guess we kind of went on a big tangent in general, but I think hopefully we answered that kind of case of yes, of course, Warcraft Rumble is pay to win. Of course, Warcraft Rumble is pay to win, but it's not as pay to win as you think, and the gap will close extremely quickly over the next few months. And you'll find that even if you've only spent on the Arclight booster, you will become competitive in PvP by early next year at least. And you'll still be able to enjoy PvP on most leaders up until 3000. And even if you look at Mr. Brute, he was someone in the beta that was at level 6s, frequently beating level 8s and level 9s because he was just very good at PvP. And so it is possible, if you're invested in the skill side of this game, to kind of beat out people. And what I will say is, even if you're only sporting level 6s, there will be a lot of people at 3000 plus that are only level 7s and level 8s. So there'll be a huge amount of people that are not level 8, level 9. There'll be a huge amount of people that are level 7, and you will be able to compete versus them very, very easily. To get a level 6, you only need to have a level 16 unit on PvE, and that is not unachievable in a relatively short space of time. On my free-to-play account, my Earth Elemental is level 15 already, and I've spent no money in the game. So, I'm very quickly moving my units up towards that level 6 PvP threshold, where actually you can still be competitive at 3,000 honor plus. So, it is just worth noting that it's not as bad as maybe, people are putting out there.
Yeah, it's so... then we'll go to another topic. But I play a lot, and I'm trying to bring all my leaders to 3K, and I'm not even halfway there. Like, I'm not even close, actually, to be. I only have 3 leaders above 3K. Well, let's say these are close to 3K. Like, more than half of them are like much lower than that. And I like, it's going from like 1,500 to 3K takes so many games, and that's with a single leader. The way I see it is I want to push every leader to 3K, and then I'll assess if all my leaders, if like my levels are too low or whatnot. But PvP does actually give you good rewards along the way, so that's why I'm pushing all my leaders to 3K if you have a positive win rate. And there really isn't much reward in PvP that much if you push anyway. So yeah, I guess once again, just have fun, don't rush it, and yeah, I think we will close this tangent here, and we could talk about something else.
Yeah, and I think we'll go on to something, a bit more lighthearted like we did with yours. We'll go into a bit more of a meta chat, and we'll start. It's the top 3 overrated and underrated troops in the game. I'm going to start with the harder one, in my opinion, which is overrated, because I think overrated is difficult right now because there's just a lot of troops that have their purpose. I'm going to start, though, since you started on the decks, I'll make it easier for you to see where I'm going with mine. My first overrated unit, and it's only recently become very popular, is Dark Iron Miner. The reason I think Dark Iron Miner is overrated is because I think it's, and I saw this comment on Reddit, and I kind of agree with it. It's a bit of a win more card. It's a great way of controlling and getting a little bit of an early lead on the gold mines, but it's very much a win more card because ultimately to have a good control on the current map, bridge control is very necessary. And so most decks will kind of aim to have bridge control in some way, shape, or form. And when you're able to control the bridge, you can kind of control the resources anyway. So Dark Iron Miner to me is very much like this, a unit that you slot in your deck to just win harder. I think it's good in Maiev, don't get me wrong, because Maiev benefits from unbound minions in general. But I think a lot of decks are just slotting the Dark Iron Miner in randomly because it's just like an additional win more card for their deck. So I think ultimately, I think it's good, but I just think people overvalue what it can do for your deck.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to agree. I think there are some uses, but the fact like that Baron Riven there, the skeletons from the skeletal mages from Baron Riven there, like they destroyed the Dark Iron Miner just by themselves, and you don't have to play anything. And just by the fact that Baron is played so much in the current meta, and even more this week with the Undead Week. Yeah, just because of that, I don't think. Like that's not just a bad matchup for Dark Iron Miner. That's like makes the card unplayable, and just for that reason, I think it is. I think it's okay. It's good, but I think it's overrated. I think overrated is fair to say.
Next up is your choice.
Okay, so for my number 3 overrated, and I might get a lot of angry comments for that one, but it's actually the Huntress. So the Huntress, to me, is like Huntress was known as like the best card ever. I'm not by any means saying Huntress sucks, especially because
he's got the worst talent for Huntress. Just so you know, guys. So he probably thinks it sucks because he's got the worst talent.
I guess that's fair. I know. I picked the wrong talent. It's still a good talent though. Like no, it's the worst, but it's still like. I think she has probably the best talents in the game. But yeah, so I still think she's very good, okay? But this list is overrated. People have been saying it's like the best unit, and it's even better with the Dragon Tower, which is true. But the meta counters her, I think, and with like Prowler, and I guess maybe that's why Prowler's in there as well in the meta. But there's a lot of stuff that do counter Huntress. So like Stone of Turin is also played a lot. The Prowler, stuff like that. Obviously, you can't like it's a type of card you can't really just like not answer. If you don't answer to Huntress, you're gonna get melted. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do. There's also everyone plays Quillbore, and you could place Quillbore behind to like bait the Huntress to attack that Quillbore. So yeah. I still think she's very good, but I think she's overrated. I'm actually not seeing. Are you seeing a lot of lists with Huntress? Can you name me 3 lists that uses Huntress? Can you name me one?
No. So when Dragon Tower first came out, Huntress was very popular. You might hear Huntress in my list at some point
Okay.
because I agree. I actually agree with you. I think I thought Huntress was going to be insane. And I think it's less about the fact that Huntress isn't good, but it's more about the fact that the meta has evolved to include some direct counters. Direct counters are Prowler. A Prowler can deal with Huntress by herself, and Stonehoof Tauren, which is also included in a lot of lists. And she is awful versus both of those units.
Yeah.
And I know that people run the Shadow Meld talent, which can kind of get her past Prowler in a lot of scenarios, but she will always attack. That's the problem with Shadow Meld, is that she won't ignore units. She will. It's not like you can stealth bomb like with Goblin Sappers where they just ignore units. She will always attack units. So it's just worth noting.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. I was saying unless you play the other, you play the
Stealth Prowler, yeah, the Stealth Prowler unit, and they just ignore each other.
No, I was gonna say the Smoke Bomb. You play the Smoke Bomb with the talent that gives stealth to both, and then
Strangers in the Night. Yeah, Strangers in the Night.
Yeah,
talent.
but that's very gimmicky. But I've had some thoughts with some deck with that, but we'll have to see.
I've had some thoughts about some Strangers in the Night deck. Like you run like, I don't know, Goblin Sappers and Huntress and maybe Stone the Frostwolf Raider, and you just run it down to their base. But you know, I think like again it's a bit gimmicky, like you said, and there's probably some answers. But look, I'll talk about Huntress a bit more when I get to her on the list. But I agree with you that I think she's a bit overrated. I just don't want to use all my talking points just yet because she's not actually my number 2. She's actually might be my number 1. So my number 2 most overrated. Spoilers of that. My number 2 overrated unit is Necromancer, which is a little controversial, but I think he is not being run in a lot of lists at the moment because I think people have sort of slightly realized that a single well pegs with Flame Burst just destroys this unit.
Safe pilot.
A safe pilot is very good if you've got Gnomish Cloaking Device because you'll always get the kill. And so a lot of the popular units in the meta deal with Necromancer quite well. Even though Jeweled Skulls is a great talent and mages are fantastic, I think he's just a little slow, and I think he's kind of fallen out of the meta. He was extremely, extremely popular in sort of the last month, even longer, of PvP, but I just think he's starting to creep out the meta a little bit because the pace of the meta doesn't suit Necromancer, and again, there are a lot of good answers to him. So I think he's probably dropping down in terms of people overrating him, but I just think he was a little overrated for quite a long time, and I think now people are starting to realize that it's not actually the best use of a 4 gold unit slot that you could use. And actually, there are actually some better undead units that Barons can run. I think the reason that he was run is that because Baron needs 2 undead slots. So funny, Fieldsy's Baron deck doesn't even use his deck slots. He doesn't use the undead slots. He actually doesn't even bother. I guess because he said to me that the gold he still has level 9 units. It doesn't make a difference. And I was like, okay, well, great to be you, Fieldsy. But you know, I think people have realized that actually there are some other units that you could run instead of him. I think people actually directly replace him for Banshee because they're the same cost, and Banshee offers a direct counter to some lists that Baron can't deal with. So yeah, I think like overall, bit overrated in my opinion.
Yeah, you know what? I don't have it on my list, but I'm gonna have to agree. I think it's because, there's one point that you didn't mention. It's first of all, the new towers really changed everything for Necromancer because Necromancer was on the last Rumble cast. I said was a unit I wanted nerfed. Actually, I thought it was extremely strong because it could deal with gargoyles extremely easily. And now the towers completely destroys gargoyles, so we're not seeing any gargoyles in the current meta, making Necromancer much worse because it was like the number 1 counter to gargoyle. And also everyone's running resistance because of that whole dragon tower, so everyone has to play resistant, and further makes the Necromancer like worse. The skeletons also do some elemental damage. So that combined with everything you're saying, that everyone's running safe pilot, everyone's running some counters to Necromancer. There's Blizzard, I think, Blizzard as well counters the Necromancer. And it's so easy to play Blizzard on a tower and the Necromancer, and that's like an equal trade. But realistically, normally you hit something else, even if the other player knows you have Blizzard and like purposely plays Necromancer alone, you can still Blizzard the Necromancer and the turret, get some more value, then get your gold refunded and some damage on the tower. So yeah, a lot of those reason makes the Necromancer much worse in my opinion, and I guess overrated because some people still think it's extremely good right now.
What's your number 2 then?
Yeah, my number 2, and I think you're gonna agree with this one a lot, and it's the Earth Elemental. So I think some people have caught on that the Earth Elemental is not great. But just recently, I was watching your stream, and people were still saying that, oh, why aren't you playing Earth Elemental in this list? But the Earth Elemental gets two-shot by all the Dragon Towers. The fact that it's armored and not resistant makes the Earth Elemental so much worse. I think it's straight up like a bad unit almost in this current meta. I wouldn't say bad. I would say like average, slightly above average. But some people think it's broken, and because it was in the last meta, but with the last turrets. But I think now it's a mediocre, or I would say okay unit right now to run in certain decks. I guess it's a good unit, but there's just so many better options. Quillbore is just more value than Earth Elemental in every single circumstances at this point. And the Earth Elemental can only be played offensively. Like you don't really defend with the Earth Elemental. You're not really tanking with the Earth Elemental at all. So yeah, I think that's why I placed the Earth Elemental as my number 2.
Dude, I think this unit is garbage.
You think it's garbage?
I thought it was garbage even in the old PvP meta. I just think that
really.
The fact that it ignores good in the old PvP meta and in my Ev deck maybe, but the fact that you can do nothing with it other than place it near a tower, because really it just ignores units, makes it to me less valuable in PvP overall, because you're so limited to what you can do with it. I love it in PvE. It's actually my favorite unit in PvE. It has yes, with harpies, because it most bosses deal physical damage with their basic attacks, and he is armored, and you can place him directly behind the boss. I mean, it's a broken unit in PvE. I'll put it out there. In PvP, I have thought this unit is garbage for ages. There was a time where I thought it was decent when they had the meeting stones on the old map, where you could place it with a Sneed deck and automatically get the gold value out of it, etc. But I think overall, like, this unit is really bad. You mentioned it, super bad versus Dragon Towers. But even when we had guard towers, even when we had guard towers, I didn't like this unit, because like it only does one thing, and that's run at towers. You can't use it to take out like Quillbore, where it actually attacks units. It can't take chests. All it does is run at towers. If this unit hit chests, maybe I would say K actually could be borderline broken. But it doesn't hit chests. It just hit towers, and it was good in a Maiev deck. But outside of that, I would almost never run it.
So I do agree with the Maiev list, but also the old Murkai list, where all playing Earth Elemental, having two different unbound tanks was helping a lot. But that goes again with the thing is where like Quillbore is better in every single scenario almost, especially right now in the meta. But like having both was very useful in those old Murkai lists and those Maiev lists. So that's why I think. And my Ev list was played a lot, right? So yeah, some people still do think Earth Elemental is very good in PvP, and it's not. It's horrible right now. I think maybe that should have been my number 1 or at least for some people, because there are people I really believe Earth Elemental is extremely, extremely good in PvP, but it's just not.
The only thing that maybe people are overlooking is running the taunt talent. So taunt on deploy, where you can essentially drop it anywhere and it will immediately draw aggro. There is probably an element of that in PvP where that would be really strong. But not many people have tried that out yet, because Obsidian Shard is just that much better for the old version of this, where you would use it primarily to draw tower aggro and keep the sort of the tower occupied for some time. So, maybe there's a world where taunt on deploy ready to rumble talent is actually good. Just no one's really tried it yet. It's also just it's an expensive 3 cost, and there's so many better 3 cost units that you want to run in your deck most of the time, right?
I agree completely.
And that takes me to my number 1. Well, you already know what my number 1 is. Huntress. I think ever since Worgen Prowler and Stonehoof have become meta, this unit has dropped off the face of a cliff, because it is just so easily dealt with by 2 units that are just fantastic. And, ultimately, she doesn't take towers super quickly. So it's not like you're dropping a Goblin Sapper that needs to be dealt with, or a Frostwolf Raider, which will 2-hit the turret on the old turret. Obviously, Frostwolf Raider not so good into the Dragon Tower. But, I think, like, Huntress as a unit is now less stock than she used to be. However, what I will say is if you're using her for bridge control, she's still extremely valuable. Like, you can't replace how powerful those bounces are at clearing out so many things. She's so good versus well pegs. She's one of the few units in the game that actually deals with well pegs, because someone in my Discord asked, like, how do you deal with well pegs and flame burst as a joke? Because not many things in the game can actually deal with it. Yeah, chain lightning's pretty decent, but like, obviously that's a tech in for most people. But like Huntress as a non-tech in unit, you wouldn't call Huntress a tech in unit ultimately. She's one of the few non-tech in units that can deal with well pegs, and I think like that to me makes her still strong. And I think I should add this. I still think she's a strong unit. I just think she's not the best unit in the game, which everyone kind of painted her as, and that's kind of how I feel. I also think that Shadow Meld is an overrated talent. I much prefer Elven Might, because I think Elven Might just gives you much better tower taking potential and also much better single target DPS. I get why Shadow Meld's good, but I just think Elven Might's just more reliable and dependable.
Mm-hmm. Well, I am obviously going to agree with everything he just said, but I already laid it out earlier, so I guess I'll immediately jump into my number one, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's, okay. I have to preface this one because I still think it's like top of A tier, still bottom of S tier, perhaps. I don't know. It's still very, very good. But my number one is actually and I think you've been playing it on stream yesterday. It's the Dark Spirit Troll. Okay, we are talking overrated. This unit is the most overrated unit in my opinion, because everyone, like, it is fantastic with big. It's okay in that Karen list we mentioned earlier. It is fantastic, but everyone and their mother is playing Safe Pilot in every single list, which is the most free trade to do. And like, so what, you are going to play your Dark Spirit Troll alone in a lane, so your opponent does get extra value, but he still does get value because the Safe Pilot, just by crashing down, crashes onto the Dark Spirit Troll and then gets another hit from the gnome afterwards. So just with the meta, I know the Dragon Tower helps a lot the Dark Spirit Troll, but to me, like, it is overrated. It's still good, and you can still play it in some lists. It's still probably top of A tier, bottom of S tier, but people are thinking it's like a SS tier unit when I don't think it is, because like Safe Pilot and Quillbore are so much stronger than the Dark Spirit Troll. Yeah, do you agree with that?
Yeah, so I think in Cairn it's really good for obvious reasons, because as you mentioned, it can outtrade the Safe Pilot. I actually would never run Big Bad Voodoo Troll outside of Cairn. I actually now have started running Poison Sting, because I think that's or Serpent Sting. I think it's a very powerful talent. I agree with you. I've never felt that Dark Spirit Troll is like S++ tier. I think it is a good ranged unit.
I thought at one point.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it's fair to think, and I think in Cairn you probably see it in Cairn and think this is an S++ tier unit.
Yeah.
But I think like it is a good ranged unit. It is decent, and it does its job well. What I would say is if people are using Safe Pilot to deal with it, they don't have maybe Safe Pilot as an option for bridge control, or they don't have Safe Pilot as an option for chest control, which is worth something in my opinion.
A Safe Pilot bait, yeah.
Yeah, it's a Safe Pilot bait to an extent. It's an even trade for Safe Pilot at the end of the day, but obviously Safe Pilot stays on the field, so maybe a little bit more value given to Safe Pilot in that sense.
Exactly.
But I've started running this in my Grommash list, but because the reason I run it in my Grommash list is there isn't many other good like Horde range units that can benefit from the Horde slot, and ultimately, even with Serpent Sting, it can take towers by itself. So Serpent Sting plus Dark Spear, if you leave it on a tower, it will take the side tower by itself, and that's kind of why I'm liking it with Serpent Sting in that particular deck. But I agree with you, it is a good maybe S tier unit, but it has been made popular because of Cairn, and I think that has meant that people have now been trying to slot it in every list possible, when actually it's just a decent range unit. It's not fantastic.
But it's actually like a very, well, you talked about that earlier. It's like probably the best answer to all those Ren Blackhand lists. It's like the best anti-air unit. Especially if he's running what's it called, the scale and whatnot.
Scale and steel.
Can you? I'm not too sure. Is poison elemental damage or physical damage, or neither?
We were having this discussion on stream the other day, and people seem to think it's elemental damage. Some people think it's true damage, so it's just damage that is dealt regardless of resistance or armored. I don't know. This is one of the things that I'd love Warcraft Rumble to have more of.
Yep.
And I'm sure we could ask the guys at warcraftrumble.gg, because they seem to be able to get a load of information. Bless them, they're really good at that. But I think
Yeah, we'll ask them.
ultimately
We'll
we'll
ask
ask them.
them,
We'll
and
ask them and we'll update you.
put it. You're gonna put it in the description.
I'll put it on a text. When I edit the video, if we get an answer, I'll put it on text on the on the screen here. So it'll be a surprise for anyone that's watching. We don't know what the answer is, but you guys will find out when we put it on text.
Okay. Well, if it is true damage, well, it's the only counter to the scale, whatever
And
talent
steel,
from
yeah.
Ren, scale and steel, because it's the only flying resistant unit. And then wait, what? No, I'm wrong. It's yeah. So the Dark Spiritual does physical damage.
But Serpent Sting could do true damage, and obviously it does physical damage anyway, so it will
So it
get
gets
through. But it's
both.
also
It gets resistant
it's a good answer
and-
to Rend as well. Yeah, it's a good answer to Rend, who comes out as armored, and it is. If people do start running Gargoyle again, Serpent Sting Troll is a good answer to Gargoyle. So when we get to a map where Gargoyle becomes relevant again, it's another good answer
That's
to
what
Gargoyle.
actually that's the example I had earlier.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. Like it's become a bit overrated as a result of Cairn, I think, ultimately. Should we go into underrated then?
Yeah, I kind of forgot we had underrated.
We had underrated as well, so let's jump
Let's
into
try to go a
underrated.
little bit quickly.
A little quicker, because when people like the long episodes, it's fine.
Fair enough.
I will jump in very quickly. Harvest Golem is my sorry. Yeah. I'll start with Harvest Golem was supposed to be my number one underrated, but whatever. We'll just go now. Harvest Golem is underrated in my opinion. It has an incredibly high HP pool, and there are a couple of really good talents for Harvest Golem. I chose Trojan Chickens, but I also think Unstable Core is incredibly strong. Like a 3-second stun, which then resets when he comes back to life for another 3-second stun. That is 6 seconds worth of stun this unit gives to everybody around it. It's not like Defias Bandits where it only goes to the killer. Everybody around the Harvest Golem gets a 3-second stun, which is super, super strong in my opinion. So I think like we've been seeing a rise of people running elemental tanks or resistant tanks that run with Frostwolf Shaman. I think there could be a world where when we lose these elemental towers and go back to a physical damage tower, that we get Harvest Golem plus Frostwolf Shaman, because it has a very high HP pool for its cost. It has some good talents involved with it, and ultimately I think would work well with Frostwolf Shaman as a support. So I just think there's the only problem is that the tank slots are so heavily contested, and there is just it's a slow unit that maybe doesn't live up to some of its talent, its tank counterparts. But I just think there's got to be somewhere that this unit is used. Its talents are really strong. It has a good, that rebirth is really nice. It's like having Cairn rebirth built into a unit. I want to make this unit work. I think there's a world where Harvest Golem should be played.
I'm gonna have to agree completely. It's not in my top 3. I had it just below. I thought of it a lot. I think I've actually seen some players like run like a kind of like a Jaina list with you just cycle some Harvest Golems and then you just lose count of which one is dead and which one hasn't died, and it's like kind of gets crazy. And I think like the 4 chickens that spawn is extremely good against all those melee units, because like they're getting swarmed by those chickens, and then like the Harvest Golem respawns and does it again. I do agree with this pick. I unfortunately didn't have it, but I thought of it for sure. It would probably be in my number 4. Yeah.
Let's go for your number 3 then.
Okay, my number 3. We're talking underrated. My number 3 is actually the skeletons. So.
Ooh.
I think the skeletons are much better than what people think. The reason everyone does no one's talking about the skeletons is because like Quillbore kind of does a better job, but that's kind of my point. Not in all circumstances. Like there's some scenarios where skeletons are extremely good. They only cost 2. They're unbound minis. They can take chests just as well as Quillbore, stuff like that. And for decks like this is the number 1 Baron within their list, played by that player at 7k honor, and he runs skeletons, right? So like if he's running skeletons, there must be something about it. It has the slot as well, so it helps a lot. Extremely close to Quillbore. It's almost the same unit. It's not because of the resistant, but I think the skeleton is much better than what people think, and I am guilty of underestimating the skeletons. That's why my skeletons are so low, actually. But now I'm kind of like try to upgrade them with tomes and stuff. Yeah, I think the skeletons are much better than what people think.
Yeah, he runs the questing buddies talent on them as well, whereas most people would run them with Exhume, which is the one that grants you the extra 2 skeletons when you drop it near a tower. Obviously, that is useless in the current meta because they just get burnt alive by the dragon towers. But it was actually quite good in the guard tower meta because you would like get 5 skeletons. So you basically got skeleton party for free without the mages, which was pretty good in a lot of circumstances. But yeah, I think skeletons. I just the only thing that I would say is that I don't know if I would ever run them outside of a Baron deck. That's my only thing is that I think they are good. Yeah, because I think they slot into Baron because of the undead slot quite nicely, and so therefore, like I said, that people are not going down the route of just Necromancer, for instance. Like he runs Plague Farmer, which I like that guy that you were talking about, Taulad. He runs Plague Farmer in his second slot, which I would never have thought of as running because ultimately there were just better Bombard units out there, and then Bombard is so specific. But I guess in the current PvP meta, getting a Plague Farmer on top of the tower is quite nice. But I think like I don't know if I can fully agree with you, but I see where you're coming from. Is the way I'm going to put it. I totally get the thought behind why skeletons are kind of thought of as a bit underrated. I'm just not sure of their utility outside of like a good Baron list, basically.
Yeah, I think like if they nerf Quillboar, we're going to see a lot more skeletons. I think it's just like it's so similar, but just slightly not as good that we're not seeing it anywhere. But I think it's much better. So I guess that's a perfect swap. Like if you guys don't have a good Quillboar but have a good skeletons, I think that's a perfect swap right now.
Yeah, the only thing that they don't do is they don't tank as well. I much prefer having Quillboar on board for like Rend, for instance. Like I've won so many Rend games by dropping a Quillboar behind a Rend and then just blowing it up with a Griffin Rider. Griffin Rider is so good versus Drake and Rend. If you can just get the Drakes to turn around, Griffin Rider is insanely good in that scenario. Whereas Skeletons will just get burnt in one go.
Yeah, well, there's the questing buddies, right? That one of them is going to have resist, so maybe it's going to bait one more hit if you place it correctly against a Ren. I don't know.
Agreed. No, agreed. Like I said, there's definitely value there, and I think the reason he's running questing buddies is to give them a bit more utility in that sense. So I actually glossed over questing buddies as an option even because I just felt that their HP pool was so low that it wouldn't make a difference. But actually, skeletons are quite tanky, as we found out from the skeleton mages. So yeah, I see why you're saying it's underrated. I don't fully agree that it is underrated, but I think like I see where you're coming from with it, and I can agree on the points that you've made 100%.
So what's your number 2 then?
So my number 2 is Worgen. So I think this unit is, and you're probably going to think the same as me as when I was talking about skeletons, but I just think that this unit is it's hard to use, and I will put this as a caveat. Worgen can be very difficult to use, but it does, especially when you've got premeditation. It does a lot of damage. It's a 3 cost that can essentially one shot certain backline units really nicely. The placement really matters, and I think that's one of the big things that makes Worgen hard to use. And it can be distracted quite easily is another problem. But I think it sees use in Maiev decks, and I think that maybe one of the only things is, and maybe the criticism that I would have of my pick here is the same criticism that I'd have of Skeletons, is that maybe it's a little too niche in terms of decks that you can run it in. But I do think that it doesn't get as much love as maybe it deserves. It is a very heavy hitting unit that can really trade up nicely. It's another good, if you don't want to run Stonehoof or if you don't want to run Stonehoof or Prowler, which is weird because you'd run Prowler in pretty much any deck these days, but if Worgen is another good answer to Huntress. It basically one-shots Huntress. So, there's a lot of good use cases, I think, for Worgen. It can do, obviously Necromancer's dropped off a little bit, but I think it's a slightly underrated unit. I would say only slightly underrated because I think like it's not a super strong unit. I just think there are people and maybe not using it in as many situations as they could do.
You know what's crazy? That was also my number 2.
Oh, was it? Okay.
So yeah, I'm gonna have to agree completely with everything with the Worgen. I think like the fact that the Necromancer got worse and not played as much makes Worgen so much better, because I think like Worgen was so hard to use because you had to place it so well so the skeleton don't get in the way of the Worgen, and then the Worgen one-shots that Necromancer, which was played everywhere. But yeah, I think there's some very good targets. It's another Unbound mini. It's another Stealth mini. Both of these traits are like the best traits right now in the meta. Very good at taking chest, and like the fact that it goes back stealth once it takes the chest a little bit like the Prowler does. It's so good because like you can't really answer, right? Like so many times like a Worgen and a Prowler is gonna go past each other because they're both stealth. And what's crazy as well, what I like to do is you play your Worgen at the last second of that safe pilot. So you play the Worgen in a way that the safe pilot walks out of the chest area and then the Worgen picks up the gold. I'm not sure if that happened to you, but like if it's really hard to do. It's probably one of the hardest media to play. I do agree with you completely, but there's some interactions like that are crazy. And I also think like when you do surprise your opponent with a Worgen, or when you do actually get a good target kill with the Worgen, sometimes you just win in like the first push if you're supported with like another Worgen and stuff like that. So extremely good unit in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. So I guess we agree on the second one, which means we can kind of go straight to our third. And this is going to be out there. I think I can guess what yours is, and I don't think it's the same as mine. I'll be surprised. My most underrated unit in the current meta is Bat Rider.
Wow.
Yeah. And the reason is that I think in the current meta, Bat Rider over the bridge, especially once you've seen Safe Pilot already go down, Bat Rider over the bridge is insanely strong. And Enchanted Vials is the talent that I thought was the worst, but Enchanted Vials over the bridge in the current meta is strong. I've been trying out quite a lot. Dropping Bat Rider as it runs over the bridge and it drops these Enchanted Vials means that you basically get a way of, like a little bit like running Dark Eye Miner, but it goes over the bridge now instead of just being around the gold mine. And you essentially get these free Enchanted Vials that control the bridge at all times. And that's why I really think that Bat Rider is a little underrated. Also, the area effect Bombard is so good because we have heavy ground units under the bridge. If you can get her into that position, she basically provides you with free bridge control to an extent, and also completely destroys anything that walks under the bridge. And that's why I think that maybe Bat Rider is just a little bit underrated. I think there is definitely some more use cases for her. She's 2 gold. She can fit into so many decks. It's just a good cycle unit as well. That's my hot take of the podcast.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I think that's a hot take. Personally, the Bat Rider for me, I don't think is too great. I guess I could see where you're coming from. People are like placing Bat Rider as like F tier or whatnot. I don't think it's F tier. I think like a lot of the minis that are just cycle minis, just by the fact that they're cycle, are just so good. It's probably an extremely hard unit to play because once again, if you play it next to another mini. And like it usually needs to be played with another mini because you need something to help with like air. Let's say your opponent is playing Harpies, you can't really allow Harpies to connect. And then I just feel like the opponent's safe pilot is going to get so much value if you don't play the Bat Rider by herself, and normally you have to play her by herself. But nonetheless, I see where you're coming from, but I didn't have her on my list.
No, I can get it. And look, and my mission is by the time the next podcast rolls around, I'm gonna change your mind. I'm gonna show you that Bat Rider can be powerful. So that's my goal by the next one.
If you guys look at all the top meta lists from all the top players, all minis that are cheap are the best minis. So I mean, perhaps if the Tyrion list that you were talking about earlier on my side of the podcast, if that list becomes popular, perhaps Bat Rider would become even better. I think Griffin Rider is at least 100 times better than Bat Rider, especially with the extra range talent. But I know maybe you'll be able to change my mind. We'll have to see.
I'm not saying that Bat Rider is suddenly S+ tier. I just think she's better than people are giving her credit for. Yeah.
I guess that could be fair. I've kind of like discredit her, I guess. I haven't gave her a fair chance since a while, but I'm ready to have my mind changed. Do you want to guess my number one?
Ogre Magi.
Oh, no, but it could have. I love Ogre Magi, so I'm kind of happy. I know you do. Yeah. My number one pick is actually the Polymorph. So I think Polymorph is the next evolution of the meta. I think Polymorph counters everything when you play Golden Fleece, where you get your gold refunded if you're able to kill that golden sheep. I think that talent makes Polymorph extremely good. For only 2 and 1, if you play Jaina with clear casting, makes Polymorph so good, so freaking good right now. It answers to everything. There's some counters. One counter that you did mention, and it's Harvest Golem, because all of those death or on death effects will still trigger if you do polymorph. So I think there is some counter to polymorph, which is cool. We see a lot of rock, paper, scissors between all minis, but I think polymorph just completely deletes so many different lists. Drakisath list, all of those stuff just gets destroyed by polymorph. It's so easy to get so much value. Like, yes, you have to kill the sheeps, right? But it's so easy to do. Everyone plays safe pilot, so you can safe pilot onto that golden sheep as well so easily. I don't know. I think this unit is we're gonna see this spell played so much more in the upcoming weeks.
No, look. I was going to put it on my list, but I knew that you were including it on your list, so I was like, I don't want to steal his thunder. I do agree. Like, polymorph is super OP and definitely hidden OP. I think, in a sense. There's so many units that revolve around having a single unit being like the really important part, like these Tyrion lists where polymorph is a great counter to Tyrion with Divine Shield. There are some lists that get around it, like Reincarnation on Cairn, for instance. You can't deal with Cairn very easily with polymorph, like you mentioned. And I think polymorph just synergizes so well with a lot of things in the meta right now. So I agree with you. I think polymorph is super strong, and I think we'll see it played a lot more in the coming weeks. It's a very high skill cap spell, which is the most important thing. Like, the timing of using polymorph is so important.
Make sure to crash a safe pilot in there if you need to. Like, just because for that 2 gold or whatnot, because you're gonna get that gold refunded. It's worth it to play polymorph and then crash a safe ballot into it to make sure everything gets destroyed. All the minis become vulnerable, so the safe ballot does so much more damage. Just extremely good, and everyone plays safe ballot, right? So extremely good. I get surprised sometimes. I play, someone plays polymorph against me, I'm like, oh shit!
I'm like, oh god, that's a spell, and I'm screwed now.
Yep, exactly. So that's my number 1, and I think I'm right about this one. I think we're gonna see polymorph everywhere soon.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think really we've gone an hour on each half again, so we need to really wrap it up. And I think that will bring our podcast to a close. Big Math. It's been a good second episode. I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully we can keep this going. I think we're aiming to do it either weekly or bi-weekly, depending on how much news we have to cover. But we'll keep you updated about when we actually finally get a schedule. But we've got a logo now, so we've got one step in the right direction. It's been really enjoyable chatting to you again, mate. You obviously, we both love the game. We're both really passionate about the game, and we want to see it do well. And these podcasts are just a way for us to talk about it and talk about our passion for Rumble, because we do really love it.
Yeah, we do.
And I guess if you enjoyed, make sure you go and subscribe to Big Math, his channel. All the links will be in the description below. If you'd like it here on my channel as well, feel free to subscribe. And we'll let you know when the next episode's coming up. See you soon.
Take care, guys.